been coaching women's university hockey since 1997. I did 7 years as an assistant coach at the University of Toronto. And along the way, I coached at various levels within the women's national team program, under 18, under 22, and then the senior national team. So yeah, heavily involved. Hockey is my passion, like all of you, and have an 8-year-old son, Connor, who isn't into hockey. He's into karate, but that's okay. And yeah, always looking to learn. So happy to be chatting with everybody this morning. Thanks for having me on.
Okay, Rick, I'll get you to introduce yourself.
Morning, everybody. Hi, Dan. Like yourself, Dan, longtime coach, probably more than 40 years, from Timbits to midget AAA and back again, and some time on the female side as well at Pee Wee Bantam level. Currently not coaching, but mentoring an organization and a group of teams that are finalizing their seasons for the most part.
Oh, now what happened? Wally, turn on your mic.
Tom Malloy.
Hi, Dan. I've coached every level. Right now I'm coaching under 13 girls. We're in the semifinal Saturday. Just found out my best D is gone somewhere. But anyways, I've coached at Mount Royal, SAIT, and UFC, half men, half women, for 22 years. I was with the Red Bulls in Salzburg. And yeah, that's about it. Just been around the game a lot.
Okay, Hal Terse.
Hi, good morning, Dan. I'm in Minnesota. Been coaching Bantams, girls JV, girls U15, and then the other 50 years, everything from pro, not pro, but college, NCAA, juniors, high school for about 15 years, high school boys. So a bunch of USA hockey stuff, but you do too much USA hockey, they get tired of you, so they get other people. But now I'm going to be putting together a coach development program for our local association, which is fallen on hard times, skill-wise, and so I'm going to try to rebuild it, starting at we call it squirts, you guys call it atoms or something like that, and mites and squirts. So anyways, thanks for joining us.
Dan, one other gentleman's trying to get on. His name is Peter Whitney, and like everybody else, he's coached at all levels. So I'm going to send him a link, Dan, but I just wanted you to sort of the email about Perry Pearn's article and the title and what your request, you're asking for information on it. So I'm curious about that article, whether you found it, the title, and see if we can begin the topic and spin from there. So go ahead, Dan. I may be a little while figuring out how to get Peter Whitney on, but I'm sending him an email right now as we speak. So
Sure.
Dan, can you talk a bit about the Pearn article and what?
Yep.
Okay,
yeah. So, we finished our season, we missed the playoffs. And so like most coaches, I'm in that process of evaluating our year and looking at kind of tools that we could look at games and how am I going to sell my players on the areas that we need to improve and what are those areas, and kind of taking a deeper dive statistically into what we do well or what we don't do well. And like a lot of you, I listened to a lot of different sources, and I had been listening to Carla McLeod on the Glass and Out podcast, and she referenced Perry Pearn's 7 keys to winning that he used within the women's national team a few years ago, and that kind of piqued some thoughts for me. I was like, well, and she couldn't remember what they all were, but mentioned shots and winning the special teams game as 2 of them, and so I wanted to know what they all were. And years ago, I think when Jim Gumry was at Denver, he had like his 7 keys to success, and I thought that it was a kind of a good way of looking at the game, but I also felt that his 7 areas were very subjective and not very objective. And so I was looking at, are there objective measures to how you evaluate your game, and how do those factor into winning? Like, what's the recipe for success? So knowing that Wally is the guru of all things forgotten in hockey or remembered in hockey, I went to the source and asked him if he remembered, and he couldn't. But Wally, you put me in touch with Perry, so I actually had a phone call with him the other day on Tuesday, which was great. And he kind of walked me through some different things he's used, both with the national team and when he was at NAIT and in the NHL, in evaluating success. So a couple of the things that he mentioned, I know that I've used this quote before from him about, in the NHL, if you win the special teams game, you win 75% of the games. And so I wanted to know, like, what is winning the special teams game? Do you kind of pull it apart, or is it just like, you score on your power play, you don't get scored on your penalty kill, like you're a plus when you score? If you score shorthanded, that's a plus. And he said, yeah, basically that's it. If you can be neutral or positive, then you're going to win most games in the NHL. And that was based on his years of experience. And then that kind of, filtered over into some things that he used at NAIT, where he talked about, if we had fewer than 20 turnovers in a game and we had 80 hits, 80 finished checks or more, then we won 95% of the time. Over his long span at NAIT, he had charted that out, and I think it was in the high 90s, 90% or above, that when they did those two things, they were successful. And the feedback from teams that were playing them were, that, oh, you're really hard to play against, and we always knew we were in for a tough game. And then what was interesting too was how he kind of segmented those statistics out for his players. So basically every skater could have a turnover in the game and you could still be successful. One person could have a couple turnovers. And then I think they said for their D, they aimed to get 5 finished checks, 5 hits per D. So that's 30. And then for their forwards, they wanted to get 4. So I think that totals 78, in total. And then, you'd have to get a couple extra from a few extra players. But for me, I like that idea of segmenting it out, like how you proportion it across your lineup, that everybody has a share of that. And then that went in, he sent me the actual chart that they used with the national team at the rivalry series. So they looked at, and part of it was looking at like what the team was doing or wasn't doing, and then kind of developing some of these performance indicators. So one was shots with traffic or net front presence, that they wanted to get 12 shots per game with net front presence. So 4 per period. They wanted to have fewer than 20 turnovers in a game, so similar to that NAIT statistic. They wanted to be above 50% in face-offs percentage. They wanted to average 10 shots per period, and they wanted to get 30 shots or more in the game. And they wanted to have their shift length to be under 45 seconds. And because that was with the women's team, it was in relation to, if they were coming from their club teams where they're kind of playing these long extended shifts, and then they come in, it wasn't conducive to the style of game that he felt they needed to play. So that was why he included that one in. And then the other one that was really interesting to me, because I never really thought about it, was, are you winning by the end of the second period? And what was interesting to me was, because we often think about changing our lines, or changing, the order, or changing how we deploy that lineup in the third period to catch up. And he was saying that, like at the NHL level, basically, if you're winning by the end of the second, you're going to win a greater proportion of games than you lose, which, you know, makes sense. So like how you deploy your lineup in the last 5 minutes or 10 minutes of the second period may be more important than how you deploy them in the third period, where you're chasing a game if you're behind. So being even or keeping the lead by the end of the second was a key stat, and it made me think, wow, that's like was a really interesting statistic, because Chris Higgins, who now is scouting with Hockey Canada, but he coached at Western University, went to the national championships with them, and he's a statistics guy. You know, I remember having a conversation with him about, you know, the year that they were really good, you know, one of their key performance indicators was, did they win the third period? And if you win the third period, you win more games. And I think there's something to that. But then I think there's something to being, you know, if you win 2 periods, so you're leading by the end of the second, you've probably set yourself up for success too. And so that was an interesting point. And then it's kind of, how do you put all those things together? So that was kind of the jumping off point. And then for me now, it's kind of looking at the analysis of like how those things factor in. For me, it's like, is there a winning recipe? And you can probably do all those things successfully and you could still lose a game. But probably if you're doing all those things successfully, you're winning more games than you lose. So that's kind of where the impetus was for all of that. For me, was like, is there a recipe, and how do we define it? And then, you know, in talking with my assistant coach, Teresa, here, was, okay, 80 hits, what's that equate to in the women's game? You know, we have a stat called bumps, but hits necessarily aren't the same thing. So I liked how he termed it finished checks, but like, how do you finish a check in women's hockey? Is it the same? Is it 80? Is it 50? Is it 60? So I'll probably do a bit of analysis in the OUA league here and come up with a bit of some numbers there to see, based on some of what the best teams are doing and then what we're doing as well.
Wally, your mic's off.
I'm going to ask the others. Like I don't believe, it's been my philosophy a long time, that everything you mentioned isn't as important as the part, the emotional intelligence of whatever you choose to focus on and how you apply it. So I'm going to let the others talk about that, because everything you said is brilliant. You know, I've seen stats and I've seen how they use it, and you can access anything from anybody. But whatever you choose to do, it's a matter of, are they going to be able to deliver on what you give them? And is your approach going to transmit belief and motivate them to be the best they can be? So, Peter, go ahead. Your hand is up.
Yeah, good morning, Dan. I just wondered if that chart that you mentioned, is that something that you can share? That part would be great. And Wally, to your point, right? All systems are good, but when you try to use all systems, nothing's good, right? So you got to find, from what Dan's talking about, what specifically will work with your team. One of the things that I ran across this year that I thought was really interesting, and I saw it with the team I was doing the color commentary for first, so it got me curious, and then I pulled up a couple Division I teams, and I found the same thing, that the teams that were scoring within the first 5 or the last 5 of a period tended to win the games. If you scored 2 or more times, first or last 5, majority of the time you won a game. And I thought that part was pretty interesting. And then you've got, conversely, the other side of that, where a lot of guys will play, you hear that phrase, first 5, last 5. That last 5, putting your best defensive 6 forwards out there, your 4 best D out there, so that you can try to create some momentum for the period coming up. So I think, to your point, all these things are really good, but you've got to figure out how they tailor to your team, right? If you don't have a team that is very physical, and they're more, let's say, skill oriented puck possession, and you're harping on them to, you got to take these many hits, you're kind of taking them away from what their strength of their game is too.
Okay, Peter, thank you. Listen, I think everybody on here has won at some point in time. Tom, he's won female championship national at Mount Royal. I've been through an Olympics and managed to be successful in one, but I've had a great deal of success because of not my knowledge, but because of how I was able to communicate with the players and my willingness to learn from them and from my own mistakes. And that started with coaching high school football with no experience. So the cultural thing here, and Rick, I know, has won national championship. He's won some major tournaments. And Tom, you go ahead and talk about your take on your keys to your success, and then Rick, sort of your keys, what's most important, what you would take away. Now, Dan's coaching, and Peter talked about the university level, and I imagine the pro level, they're breaking things down to that degree. But Tom, go ahead.
Well, when Perry was coaching Nate in its heyday, I coached against him for 4 years, and his teams were very intimidating. They did this he called a pinch, where they just came really hard, especially early in the game to get a lead, and they'd come really, really hard, and they were beating U of A regularly. Then they'd have a game in the big rink in Edmonton and have 14,000 people there, and they really, really did come at you hard, and he had lots of really good players. So, I can see where his 7 points are coming from because I saw them, and they're extremely difficult team to play. So, and I just wanted to say something. I've come upon something accidentally that's works the best I've ever came upon in my life with these 13 girls. At the start of practice, I have them all get a puck and they're skating around, and I blow the whistle, and they have to do a tight turn towards the boards and take 5 hard strides. And I let them go for, a little time, do it again. And I do that, 4 or 6 times. Then I start blowing the whistle twice, so they have to go one way or another, like forwards lose guys on the boards. And it's incredible how they've incorporated in their game. I got my D are doing cutbacks on people all the time. And it's just, I've never really done anything that players have incorporated in the game more than this. And it's such a good, such a good thing, good habit to do, to lose your, who's ever chasing you. And then I'll get the D also. They'll take a step to the inside, like when someone's chasing you, you get the puck and you're going towards your own goal. Take a step to the inside, like 45-degree angle to the net, and then do the tight turn to lose a forechecker. And, those things. So I know it's not on Perry Pearn, but I just thought I'd share that thing. But I agree with the stuff that Perry says, because I saw firsthand how good they were. At one point, they had 50-game winning streak in our league, like over a couple of seasons. And I know we beat them up in Edmonton and snapped their streak. A little really good goaltending one game and did that. But he really had it going at college.
Tom, your point on what he did, Dan, to me, however you break out, however you forecheck, whatever stats you keep, it's and I noticed this with Tom's teams, the breakout is a tight turn at any level, an evasive tight turn. And if you're doing breakouts and pre-scouting and figuring things out without a fundamental evasive tool to create time and space at any level. But Tom discovered it at that level, and I mentioned it early in the season because I watched Tom's team, and that to me is sort of the art of coaching, is what you do at the right time that's going to resonate with them at the age and skill level they're at to execute. It's sort of timing. Before I turn it over to Rick, I want to tell the story I remember about Perry Pearn when he took over Nate, that team, his first year coaching college hockey. He inherited that team. He was given the job. They had a trip to Colorado College to play an exhibition series. And I hope I get the story fairly accurate. He's driving, they fly, and they've rented vans, and he's got the van with all the equipment in it, driving it. And he had a trainer driving another one and a player driving another one. And of course, he had to wait for everything while the other two vans headed off. And on the highway, maybe it was a half hour up the road, he saw one of the vans parked and 2 or 3 players pissing in the ditch with a beer in their hands. And what he did, to me, matters more about winning, because they got through the weekend. He realized that kind of thing is what he was dealing with at that age, that environment. He'd never coached it before. And when he got back after the weekend trip, the story he related was he withdrew their scholarships. End of story. He changed the culture to accept his beliefs, his understanding, his philosophy. And that's a very powerful turning point. And I know the coaches that I respect the most, and Claire Drake is one of them. And the reason he had success is not that he knew more than anybody else in any particular area, although he was very versed in playing without the puck, but his ability to get across to his team and to create a team were the difference, the separator. And that's the point I wanted to make. And Rick, I'm going to have you talk about your situation, because I really admire it at Rick's level of coaching. And you know, it's major midget, and coaching minor hockey is difficult. Probably more difficult, Dan, than your level, because I would suggest less parental interference in coaching occurring than you would face. So, Rick, go ahead and please relate your story.
I guess, Wally, if I had to put it into words, most successes that I've had have been relative to controlling the things you can. So to explain that, Wally's well familiar with my code of conduct concept, but we set parameters and get an understanding with our parent group, and most importantly, our players right from the get-go. This is the way we're going to do our business. From arrival times to all of the preparation that goes into a game and or a practice. Simple things like having your skate sharpened before you get there, have your sticks taped before you get there. Have 2 sticks. One isn't enough. If you break one, your game is done. You can't borrow from somebody. Little things like that, but essentially controlling all of the aspects of our existence together. And I guess you could capsulize that as culture. With the idea that if you can control the things that are easy to control, you're better able to control the things that are out of your control, that being what happens on the ice surface. I never felt that if I had a renegade group of players in the locker room, that I'd have an even worse situation on the ice surface. So we work with very strong fundamentals on training the players on skills, not so much on X's and O's, but more on concepts, on how to read the game and interpret what needs to happen and then the proper execution to cover that. And that's what's worked for me. That's not the magic formula for a lot of people. There's no great power plays or anything of that nature. I borrow and steal drills from everywhere. I create drills to accomplish something of a specific nature. Did that just last night with a U18 group to deal with an issue that they were having. So it's just good planning, lots of work, lots of thought, more work. You know, for a 1 hour practice or an hour and a quarter practice, which is all we get out here for the most part, you might put in 3, 4, 5 hours of prep, reworking, rethinking. No, that's not going to work. Let's try this, and then put it on the ice and see how it works, and then adjust further if you need to.
I think that's you know, a key, like that key piece. I think that art of coaching, the planning. For me, I think, you know, analytics has become such a huge part of the game of hockey at the pro level, that's filtering down to university and into youth hockey. But I think where a lot of the hockey community, and not this group, but I think, you know, the media around hockey and parents that are around hockey think that you can apply, you know, well, Connor McDavid plays this many minutes, so my little Johnny or Susie should play this many minutes because she's the best, he is the best player, or she's the best player. And I think for coaches, it's being able to filter that out, you know, in the context of your goals, your culture, what you're trying to achieve. So I think the analytics community is really good at telling us what's happening in the game. And for us as coaches, and this is, I guess, part of my journey with this topic or with this discussion, is like to know the why. Why, like, how do I want to change the team? What are we good at? What are we not good at? How can I, you know, Rick, to your point, then put that into practice, plan appropriately so that I can build the tactics, or as Tom was talking about, you know, that quick turn and 5 hard strides. You know, for me, I have a young team at the university level. We have, you know, 16 players in first or second year. So there's lots of mistakes happening, which is fine, but it's trying to get them to understand the way that I'd like us to play the game, that I think we need to play the game to be successful, not just to win hockey games. Because for me, you know, I think there are teams at the college or university level, and I think there's teams at the youth hockey level. And I don't like this style of hockey. It's not that it's not a good style of hockey, but I'm not a fan of dump and chase. So I know that if we played dump and chase hockey where I didn't have the puck on my players' sticks, we'd probably win a couple extra games because we wouldn't make mistakes that end up in our net. But, you know, if I want us to be a national contending team, we can't be a dump and chase team because you just can't get there if you don't have skill on the puck. So it's a conscious choice then for me to have to live with the pain of those turnovers from time to time as we go through that kind of growth period. And that was something, you know, Wally, I really enjoyed the conversation that you had with Thomas Pacina about like that whole puck possession style and how they worked it and how they practiced it with the Czech women's national team. And Carla talked about that. One of the challenges she had was then how do you convert that puck possession style to creating more offense, like more shots and volume. And so that's kind of where all this is triggered, is how do you take this data? How do you build the program that you want in terms of putting drills on the ice or games that make them think, and then how do you sell the philosophy? So I think all those things come together. And I 100% agree on culture. In fact, I don't know, Wally, I probably didn't tell you, but I'm back doing my master's, and it's in athlete leadership. So it's all around how you build that leadership and culture within a team. But it's like taking the science of it and then building the art. Like I think that's where the coach has so much work to do, is to take all of this data, all of the science of the game, And then the art is how to prescribe that so that your players buy in. So I don't know what the group thinks about that.
Mike,
Mike, well,
I mentioned, like, we are creatures of habit. We've coached the way we've coached. And I've been able to adapt and learn more from not knowing anything, coaching football. And I think, what have you learned in all your coaching experience at every level that you've gone through, that you've changed relative to performance and getting a better result? Because if I stayed with the same way, with the decisions that I've been making because I think I knew it, I wouldn't have succeeded. And the example I have is a provincial final, best of 5, go into the junior A provincial final, thinking the Russian 2-1-2 forecheck's going to throw them off base. And we lost the first 2 games on the road. But during the second period of the second game that we were losing, a player came up to me and said, "Cozy, can we go back to our old forecheck?" And the player felt confident enough to approach me. And I said to him, "I don't know why I didn't think of that." We went back. It wasn't about what I was thinking and my coaching and my sense of direction. It's what the player said, which was true. Obviously, we weren't performing well enough to win. And it ended up being, to me, a critical point because we ended up winning the next 3 games and then the fourth game, but coming back to their barn. But that's anything like that, stories that you can talk about relative to your experience, because, and then I'm going to ask the group, or I'll refer to Peter on his topic, but also ask the group here, what are some deja vu moments for them as coaches where they've learned, had to change their approach, and had success from it? So, Dan, can you speak to that first?
Yeah, well, when you were saying that story, on the one hand, I was thinking like the forecheck is really like there's so much more nuance to the game, but that was really the lead in for the players to say, let us do what we think we can do really well, and then that affects so much, like it has this kind of cascading effect that affects other parts of their game. The story that comes to mind when you were telling that, Wally, for me is when I coached the under 18 women at the World Championships. So it was the first time that Canada had won at the Worlds, and I was part of a really great staff. We had some amazing athletes that went on to play in the Olympics. So I was privileged that way to have a great group to work with. And also we had a longer than normal prep period for that group. Normally you'd have them a couple weeks in the summer, and then, we basically had a full year to evaluate, to work on stuff at short-term competitions. And we knew that it was going to be tough. It was in Chicago against the US that had won, I think, 2 or 3 straight of the first 2 or 3 women's worlds at the U18 level. They had some great players. Kendall Coyle Schofield was their big star player. So the whole plan was built around adversity. And we had a great mental skills coach, Kim Thompson. And I tell the story often, but she would do these relay races, and it would be 2 teams, and it was a relay, and you had to run 10 meters or whatever. And then she had like these Disney puzzles, the big, like just 30 pieces, like big chunky pieces that are for, young kids. But she would take 2 pieces from each set and switch them. So, it would be like a Mickey Mouse one and a Frozen one, and take 2 pieces and switch them. And the players would be racing to get it done, and they could only put in 1 piece at a time. And then they'd get to the point where they're down to their last two pieces, and the one group got up there and they froze. They're like, these are the wrong pieces, they don't fit. And they, ran back and like, I don't know what's going on. And then the next person ran and couldn't figure it out, and they ran back, and the other group ran, noticed, took a look, oh, these are the wrong pieces, looked over at the other table, saw that their pieces were there, and then took the piece from that table, put it in, ran back, told the next person, look at the other table for the piece, and they won. And people were saying, that's not fair. It's not fair. You didn't give us the right pieces. And she said, well, it was fair for both groups. One group handled the adversity better than the other. They problem solved, they communicated, they didn't panic. And like, so those debriefs, and then we would play small area games where we would start out and there would be like, okay, whoever wins today, the loser's picking up pucks or something. So there was some little consequence, not like dire consequence, but there was something on the line for the small area game. And then we'd say, Red's up 2-0 before we ever started to play. And they would go, oh, it's not fair. And this was the whole like camp summer competition. It also showed us like a lot of the character of some of the players. And we made like some key changes between the summer and the World Championships just based on personality. Of who would be like good leaders and good people to fit in and be able to deal with the adversity. And when we went to the World Championships, we got scored on the very first shot of the game. We were down 3-1 at the end of the first period, and no one panicked because they were used to the adversity. They knew that we were going to have to battle through this. And like my message to them was at the first intermission is just win the next two periods and you give yourself a chance to win a world championship. And there was no panic within the staff, no panic within the players, and they just kept playing the same way regardless of the score or the time. And we were successful. We won in overtime. And it was 4-on-4 overtime, but we played like we were on a power play the whole time because we'd practiced that as well. We'd played a team that we played a university teams, like a collection of the OUA All-Stars and PWHL All-Stars, and they actually beat us. But we had played those 4-on-4 games, so we'd had experience. And as it turns out, I remember Tim Bothwell coming up to me and saying, did you guys practice that beforehand? And I was like, yeah, we did it several times. He said, you could tell. I asked Katie, and the U.S. hadn't done it. And so they were playing to not lose at that point, whereas we were playing to win. So that shift in mindset, that ability to build around adversity, really, I think, was one of the best coaching jobs that I've been able to do in collaboration with all the coaches and staff and the players really buying in.
Okay, before I turn it over to Peter, short-term competition, Dan, I've found is easier than a season. And I've really
way easier. Well, yeah. And also way easier when you have the best players in the country. Let's be honest. It's an easier group to get them to be able to make changes quickly. I think in 2019-20, the year COVID canceled everything, my team at York, we went to the national championship. That's the best team that I've had in university that I've been the head coach. And they had many of the same attributes. They were able to learn from adversity and apply those lessons immediately. And that for me is like, I'm trying to capture that magic again of having a group that has great leadership, strong connection, fit, strong athletes, skilled, learn from adversity and can apply it, that mental resiliency. Like, cause I think that's, when you have successful teams, for me, I always think when you watch the Olympics, you watch, the NHL, the Stanley Cup champion, you watch any championship, you never hear the championship winning team saying, we won, but what a bunch of jerks, hate each other. They always say, we have great culture, we're a family, we have great leadership, people did their role. And I think there's something to that. And I'm sure all of you have enough experience that when you've had really great teams, there's been that secret sauce there of the cohesion of the group is as important as the skill of the group. They're not two separate entities. At least that's what I think.
Yeah. Before Peter comes on, I'm trying to get a friend on that's won 4 national midget championships. Because he really, of all the people I've ever run into coaching at any level, he's mastered he's won championships with less talent. And his philosophy of coaching, consistency of delivering it and building a team is phenomenal. So hopefully I can get him to join later. But Peter, go ahead.
Yeah, really, I think this kind of encompasses a little bit what you were talking about, and certainly what Dan was just mentioning now. I really feel like talent without positive culture always underachieves, and strong culture, however, can overcome that talent. My most recent, I think, example of that, and to me, it's a good story because we did well with it. But we were a very average team. This is at the college level, and with about, I think, maybe 8 games left in the season, we had a player on our team that, and I think most teams have this player. Everybody loved this guy. Hard work and talent, hard working, not a lot of talent. Puck on his stick, you swear it grew legs and ran away from him, like one of those kinds of guys, but was willing to do whatever he needed to do. And again, Wally, to your point about listening to your players, right? As a coach, you always try to put the most effective players out on the ice. I think one of the mistakes we can make is just assume that effective means you can score a goal, or you'll be the first, you'll be that awesome goaltender and make those saves. And in this story, my captains came to me and they said, "We really want you to get this guy in the lineup." He said, he works hard. The boys love him. They're going to play for this guy. So, and they said, and they understood, they're smart. They said, "And coach, we're not saying you never have to put him in the game, but get this kid on the bench." So we did that, and we went on this 7-game run. At the end of the season, we knocked off the team that in the preseason polls was picked to finish first. Then in overtime, we beat the team that did finish first and went to the finals. Fell a goal short in the finals, but this is in an established league, and this was only our second year in that league. And I firmly believe we had that success by and large because, Wally, to your point, we listened to the players, because as a group, our culture was we wanted to win. That's what we were there to do. And these guys, not only did they want to win, but they knew what that, right? They knew what the Colonel's secret recipe was in his Kentucky Fried Chicken, right? They knew what that was. And putting that kid in, I think was a difference maker for us. So that was just a great story. It actually was my last year of coaching. So it was kind of a bittersweet way to go out, but also really a fun way to go out to see these guys come together. But the only reason they came together was because of culture. And to Dan's point, it wasn't because of talent, because everybody we played was more talented than we were, but we had that little special something. So that's all I've got.
Thanks.
Dan, before I'm going to defer to Hal and bring up a story I think that Hal might connect with, is when you said the topic. Now, I don't know if Perry's title was Keys to Winning or Keys to Success. Do you remember?
Yeah, I think it's Keys to Success.
Okay, because the first thing when we talk to coaches, a coaching clinic, is defining winning as being the best you can be, and being able to realize that process, regardless of what you decide and when you apply it and how you're going to do it, there is so much that goes into it that the X's and O's are a factor. And the more you can use to your advantage, the better. But there's a phrase, and you might not have heard it, Dan, but a friend of mine, Ray Perras, who's written a couple of books, and he's brought me in to work at the University of Ottawa with the men's team and the women's team. And The Art of Leadership, he said, is about the right stuff, the right amount, the right time, whatever you choose to do to get the result you want. And there's times you do nothing. And Tim Bothwell added to that the right way. And so it's funny, on the talk show this morning, the Calgary Flames are struggling, and it's all coming down to Sutter's coaching style. And they're talking about something he did the first game that Jacob Pelche said after his first game. They asked him what he thought about Pelche, and he said, well, he was tremendously mediocre. So, you know, now you got to be able to take that if you're Pelche or his folks or the other teammates. And you have to know that it's not about, you know, he knows what he's saying. It may not be the best thing to say and the best way to say it, but you really have to adapt to at that level to every coach. And they turn them over there, Dan, unlike in your league. You know, it's a job for life. And you aren't going to be under the microscope of the score clock and having success, or you lose your job. But hell, you experienced this year, and you related the difficulties that go on, like in minor hockey, Dan. You know, college hockey to me is it's just the ideal world. You've got student athletes. You're going to have them for 4 years. You're going to impact them as human beings and teach them how to be a great team member and be the best they can be at whatever they choose to do. And academics matter more than the result of the team. In fact, it's going to probably teach them to be a better student and a better person when they're done the school. But hell, you ended up had a pretty successful season, and I would say for you it was a winning season, even though you didn't get the championship. And I always want, you know, I edit this for, and Dan, this is the first time we've had a high level coach on at this level talking about X's and O's. So much of our audience is a minor hockey audience, coaching AAA, AA, Junior A, or Tom, U13 girls. And the idea of developing them, the process of development and defining what that is in terms of what is successful is important. So, Hal, can you talk about your situation and over the years, your experience in Minnesota hockey with the idea of a key to success and how you managed to change things and how things came around over the way you did things and when you chose to do them? Go ahead.
Wow, that's a lot to unpack there. I've enjoyed listening to all of this, and I've never had a national team of those kinds of athletes other than way back in 81 or 81 at the National Sports Festival. They were all Division I players. That was pre-Olympic evaluation program, and that was really actually quite fun. But I've been mostly either at the high school or, high school, junior, or minor hockey. What Wally's referring to is, a Bantam team, 14 and under. That was not, I had nothing to do with selecting the players. The selection process was not great. We had kids that shouldn't be on the team at the top end and the bottom end, mostly because of attitude issues, not because of skill issues. And I took this team over. Actually, I was gone the first 10 days. I was on a photo shoot down in Costa Rica. And I come back and I'm on the ice with the kids for about a week. I meet with the parents and I looked at them and I said, this is going to be ugly for a long time. I mean, they couldn't complete 2 passes in a row. And then we had some kids that became quite problematic during the course of the season. a number of suspensions, some lawyers involved. I mean, you can't make up this stuff, really. It's just Minnesota Hockey screwed it up, the local association, everybody screwed it up, including Safe Sport. Okay, so we get to the last part of the season. We have a few games left, and then we go into our district playoffs, and we're a 7 seed out of 10. We beat the 10. We lose to the 2 in double overtime. So now we're in the bottom of the bracket. We beat the next 2 teams that were, I think, the 3 and the 5 in overtime. And we lose to the number 2 team in overtime. So we got 5 games out of that. We weren't expected to get more than maybe 2. All right, so what happened? We had a little party last weekend with the team. Most of them showed up. One of the dads came over and said, you told us at the beginning that this is a journey and this was going to be tough sledding until the end of the season. And he says, God, you were so right on about that. So I go, that gives me good feelings. But what really it was is looking at what our strengths and weaknesses were as a team. And as I did the coaching clinics for USA Hockey for many years, I say your job is to figure out what you've got and figure out what are 2 or 3 things that you can do to make your players better and your team better. And over the years, it's number 1 is skating. Because most kids don't get good skating instruction. And coaches assume they get it in the off season. The off season, all they do is play a lot of games for the most part. Now, I'm not dealing with elite players, but even with elite players way back in the summer, we used to run overspeed training with Jack Blatherwick, who trained the 80 Olympic team that won the gold medal. And it was all skating, just, overspeed skating and technical skating and how to do it correctly. Outside edges, how important they are, all this kind of stuff. And, my theory is, because I only have these kids, some of them for 1 year, some of them for 2. If I can make them skate better and I can create an environment where number 1, we outplay the other team. Just physically, we skate harder, we play harder. We will beat teams that have better skills. And we went to 45-second shifts after seeing a couple 2-minute shifts. I said, that's enough of that. 45-second shifts, and all of a sudden we start winning games. Also with this hockey team, I told everybody at the beginning of the season, there'll be no short bench. The only time I would do it was at the last 5 minutes of a game. And we need to win the game to get another game. But even in when we were in these overtime games, so you go 5 minutes in the third period, now you're going to double overtime. I watched our 2 high school teams in town here who played 2 lines go to the state tournament, and they both lost because the other teams were playing 3. And so over the years, I've learned a lot over the year. I don't coach the same as I did 5 years ago. I don't coach the same as I did 10 years ago. But the same concepts are there, the same process is there. It's just how I layer them on top of the team. When I started to coach girls, that took about 6 weeks till the girls and I had an understanding of where we were all coming from. And I started to ask permission to give them some recommendations during practice. And finally, they came up and said, okay, coach, we're happy to have constructive criticism, but there's a trust factor there. I also think the first year you coach any player is a getting to know each other year. The second year, if you still have them, that's when you can really do some good things with them, because they know you, you know them, they know what you're all about, and you know what they're all about. And to the point of having, so this, our last game this year, one of my captains came to me and said, you know, we want so we had a female goaltender and a male goaltender, and they were both good. But the female was the first year, the male was second year. But we'd alternated goalies all year, except when the male goaltender was in the Bahamas on Christmas and missed a tournament and stuff like that. But the boys wanted, they wanted their buddy to play. They said, his game at this level, he goes up to the next level. And I said, well, you say you and the boys have talked about it. You talked to her about it? Well, no, but we think she'd be okay with it. No, I don't. I mean, she might, but that's not fair to her. I said, I promise those guys, those goalies are going to play every other game. And that's, and I told the team, I told the parents, I said, that's what we're doing. Well, coach, we tend to not play very well at the beginning of the games. And if we get down by a couple, we got a problem. But the other guy, he holds us in. I said, well, that's on you guys. That's not on your goalie. You make sure you don't get down and get out there and play at the beginning of the game. And I said, just trust me, this is the right thing to do. So the game went pretty well. We did end up losing it in overtime. But between the second and third period, I was out of the locker room, and the captain came out and he looked at me and goes, you're absolutely right, coach. You made the right decision. Because she was awesome. So, some of these decisions are hard sometimes. And I'm coaching 14-year-old boys right now. And I said it was my last season, but I've been saying that for 15 years. So we'll see. Well, I'm gonna have to talk to my left knee and see if he wants to go a little more. But I don't know. It's such an interesting process, and every year it's a different set of problems. Now to go back to data, collecting data and stuff. I worked with Jim Johnson. He's now the development coach. Do you know Jim? He's with Anaheim now. He played in the National Hockey League. He's a good friend of mine. And when he was coaching in, I think, Norfolk, which was the AHL team for the Lightning, he developed an on-ice player effectiveness rating system on the theory that coaches tend to cut slack for the guys they like, and they're harder on the guys they don't like. But without the data, you can get away with that. But if you have the data, the other thing about it was not everybody's going to score goals. Not everybody's going to block a lot of shots, but everybody can do something to contribute to the value of the team. And he had a point system for it. If forwards block shots on the PK, they got 2 points. But if D blocked it, they got 1 because they're supposed to block them, and stuff like that. So it's interesting when you post that up in the locker room, the kids, and this was high school now, I modified it a little bit for high school, but the kids that know that they're just kind of skating up and down and they're not contributing much won't even go look at the sheet. But the competitive kids will go look at it and will modify their behaviors. So it's about providing information to everybody to modify their behaviors in the interest of helping the team win. And so that's a pretty interesting idea. Of course, at the level, Dan, that you're working at, you probably have people that can collect that data for you. Maybe. Or you got game film and you got to spend 3 hours going through it. And the key is having the same person collect it, because, what's a hit, what's not a hit. And even in the National Hockey League, Jim was telling me when he was coaching up in Edmonton, the stats would come out of the box upstairs, and Jim would go through the video and go, they don't even know what they're looking at up there. Those stats are wrong. And so anyways, that's my story this morning. So I envy you for having the opportunity to coach at such a high level for so many years. Because I did have a really, really great team one time, was undefeated until we got to the national tournament, which was a community-based Bantam team playing against AAA teams from all over the country. We weren't supposed to win. We didn't. But that was in 2002, and 4 of those kids are still playing pro hockey now. 1 in the National Hockey League, and the other kids in Europe, and 2 played in the National Football League. So it's fun to coach talent. It's a whole different game when you're coaching talent. By the way, Wally, I don't know if did Sammy Joe tell you that we had a cup of coffee when they were in town about 3 weeks ago, and so she's a pretty I don't know, Dan, you know Sammy?
Yeah, so the Toronto Six play out of the same rink as us, so I see her in the parking lot quite a bit to and from. So I know Sammy for a number of years.
She's awesome. So we've been sharing leadership stuff back and forth and that kind of stuff. So okay, somebody else should talk now. I'm tired.
Well, Dan, I'd like, I think Hal sort of got on the emotional intelligence side of coaching. And I'm just wondering what you take out of what he said relative to your environment and what you're looking for.
Yeah, I think a lot resonated with me because I think good coaching, you're coaching people, right? It's not like, sometimes I wish it was like a PlayStation and you could control them and press the X button and they'd shoot it harder. But they're human beings. So I think that's getting them to buy into a philosophy and a timetable. One of the goals that we set for our team this year was that our last game would be our best game. Mm-hmm. And it was very open-ended. We didn't put a lot of definition to that. I don't think we achieved that goal from my standpoint, but I felt it was a good kind of team culture goal. And the other thing, we set a culture goal for our team, which was that, and we haven't evaluated that piece yet because we're not finished kind of our, we're still training even though we're done our season. And the culture goal was that everybody would have some sort of meaningful relationship with every other teammate, that they would know each other better. And I felt that was important because we use this word, which is a Maori word called wanu. It means family, but it's more than just your immediate family or extended family. It's your community and ancestry. Like, it's this whole inclusive feeling. So, that's what we're trying to do over the course of our year. On the hockey side, one of the things that I see and trying to coach my players through is this idea of, there's a difference between feeling pressured and being pressured. So in the game, when they feel pressure, they'll revert back to the kind of lowest common denominator habit or skill. And a lot of times it's give the puck away. Like, I don't want it anymore. Give it away. Don't take responsibility. And getting them to understand that that's just a feeling that they have. And then when they're actually being pressured, that they can still protect the puck, manage it, wait till someone joins, combine to create a 2-on-1, make a positive play. And that if they turn the puck over because they're trying to make a play, they're still in the battle. But if they just throw the puck away, now you're chasing the game. And for me, that distinction, and I think Hal really hit, or for me, it resonated when he was talking about the second year with a player. I think a lot of the first years, by the end of the season, they were getting better at it. As we go into these, like, we're doing a lot of small area games that require a lot of decision making and thinking, and it's difficult. But like, it's encouraging to see them making those small steps towards feeling pressured, but making a decision, like, holding on to it rather than reverting back to throwing the puck away or making kind of their kind of, I'm going to, flip this puck or do something that doesn't really progress it for the team. So that's kind of what resonated with me, is like that process of coaching human beings and getting to understand them and where, like, what their fears are, and then connecting that with like what their potential is and trying to maximize that potential.
I'll jump back in because.
Dan, before hell I get to you, Dan, Cee's coached me at the U of C. Now, Cease, I don't think he's living, but his grandchildren are maybe coaching in the NHL now. I know they've played in them. But he had a phrase that related to that. And to me, this is something, you know, all athletes, we have that fear, apprehension. And he used the term positive apprehension. And I thought that's worth, whenever he came in the room and mentioned it, it just took the pressure off my shoulders. So you look at the challenges as being welcomed and something you can deal with, not cope with, deal with, take control of. You can still be at your best. And I believe that the line between winning and success and losing is so fine, we often beat ourselves. And I think that's, as long as you don't beat yourself, you've won. And I find in minor hockey, the way coaches shorten the bench and allow kids to get away with behaviors, they beat themselves. The opponent doesn't beat them. And it's something to, we're dealing with ethical coaching, I call it, I think, which is automatic with when you coach at college and coach students, athletes, you have to coach ethically. There's just no questions about it. But boy, in minor sports, I think what kids are going through is really challenging. Hal, go ahead.
I just come back to what you were talking about, getting to know each other in your locker, on your team. When I coached a high school team that was really a B team in skill and an A in league, and we were well over 500 almost every year for 15 years, and surprised some people every year. But I used the term strength in the locker room, strength on the ice. If you don't have a strong locker room, you don't have good relationships between your players and the staff in the locker room. Now, the locker room, we expanded the locker room to meaning at school. When you're out, kids have a choice. On Saturday night, if you don't have a game, they got a choice to make. What are they going to do? Okay, some kids want to go party. Some kids are going to not do that. We've got rules against that in high school hockey in Minnesota. If you drink and get caught, you're suspended. All those kinds of things. But it's about trying to get the leadership in the room to help the other players remain strong as a group when they're alone, when they're away from. Now, it doesn't always work, but conceptually, it's a for me, that strength in the locker room. It's also taking care of each other at school, taking care of each other wherever it is that you are together. And so it's just a little different approach to what it's a different language. So you might try some of that if that resonates with you. Sometimes you got to approach things from 2 or 3 different ways until it all of a sudden, oh yeah, that kind of makes sense to me. So anyways, I just thought I'd share that.
Yeah, Hal, before I turn it over to Peter, Dan, years ago when I was working with a national team, I was scouting, but I had an office, Hockey Canada, running into the coaching staff. And, every year when you have the national team, you sort of come up with a T-shirt and a motto of some kind. And that's sort of like, it's something that's just in your mind all the time. And I happened to be driving to a chiropractic appointment, and there was a pedestrian crosswalk with a sign, a big City of Calgary sign, pedestrian crosswalk. Look after each other. Look both ways. And I went back and talked to Melody after that, and I said, you know, I just saw this. It's exactly that. And that was their, I think it was the 2006 year, probably our best year ever. That was on their t-shirts. So those are the things that take you over the hump in terms of whether you win or lose. You're looking after each other all the way, and there's no drama. So Peter, go ahead. No, Peter, you're next, and then Tom. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I actually, to kind of support what Hal was talking about there too, right? The importance of culture. I mean, culture really it's the behaviors that are deemed acceptable to the group, right? So them building that piece of, you know what, we're not going to go out drinking Thursday night. That's when you're in college. That's the night to go out. Apparently Thursday night. We got a game Saturday. We're not doing that. Whereas if you have something that's a little bit more loose and it's accepted, then you're going to create those bad habits. Like, it's not easy to create good culture, right? As a coach, it's hard, but it's even more difficult when you have to hope that you have a group of team leaders who get it, but also you can't rely on them. If you do, I think it's a mistake to be the sole proprietors of that information, right? You have to do so many different things to get your entire team on board of accepting the culture and being that it's a positive for each other, just as human beings. Let's take the hockey piece out of it. It's not good for you to go out and do that because Friday morning you got a test and you're not going to do well. You're going to struggle with that test. And I care about you and I know that. So I'm going to make sure we don't do that. I'm going to help you through whatever I need to help you through. But yeah, Hal, you're spot on. Like with your point there. Like, but that's really it. Culture is the minimum that's accepted. I had a lunch with a boy that I used to coach, who's now an assistant coach, and that's what his team is going through right now. Is you had about a dozen freshmen this year, and they're trying to figure it out. And as you grow and progress in a program, those freshmen, some of them are better than the veterans. So now you've got freshmen saying, well, why should I listen to you? Because I'm a better player than you. So getting them to understand that is, while obviously that's important, that's why you're all there, that becomes secondary to success, to the culture away from the rink, away from the room that you can create. That's all I got.
So am I up here? I don't know. I lost my volume or something. I don't know.
You're good, Tom.
Okay. Well, one thing that, well, on what Peter talked about and about the drinking and all that, it made me think of, I was with University of Calgary and we were ranked #1 in Canada. And we're playing the #4 University of Regina. They're 4th in the league. So they upset us the first game. And I think they beat us 2-1 or something like that. Well, we went on the second day, Saturday, we win 10-1. And our guys had planned a big keg party after they won the series, right? You can have a party Saturday night. Well, the series is 1-1, and they still had the keg party. So we play at like 1 in the afternoon on Sunday. And we end up getting beat on a rim around that hit the crack in the boards where the Zamboni comes out, goes to the front, our goalie's behind the net, and we lose by a goal. And I know Terry Johnson is still mad at these guys for because you work all year, and they basically blew it. They shouldn't even be in the same ballpark as us. And that's, you know, that's the kind of thing that not having that, your leader being kind of like a party guy, not considering the situation. Yeah, another thing I wanted to talk about is I've totally changed the way I before games. Right now I go in and I ask the players, you know, they put up their hand to say, talk about what they're, you know, what we need to do, what we're good at, this sort of thing. And the players do it instead of listening to me babble on and on. And then we go around the room and we have a theme every time we go around the room. Everybody, like the other day, Jim, my son, assistant coach, he had them all saying what we needed to do to have a really good game. And they all go and just make one statement. And meanwhile, while I'm on this call, I'm always updating my I have well over 1,000 girls on my Hockey Coaching ABC site. And when I put them in PDFs, they didn't have YouTube video. So I'm trying to change them so all the PDFs have the YouTube video. And I just came to a part that I think is the absolutely critical things for youth hockey. It's a game where they have to make one pass in each zone. And my friend Juuso, my Finnish friend, hockey, he's in the Hockey Hall of Fame. He said the game causes things to happen. You use the game, it causes things to happen. So if I have to make, you know, I have to make one pass in the zone, I can't make one pass unless you get open for me. So it causes puck support. It also causes the biggest thing, in that, especially in this pee-wee level, you know, we play teams and I know that the other team is going to get the puck and try to go end to end. They very seldom pass. And there can be someone beside them. They don't even know they're beside them. They don't look, you know. So it causes the puck carrier to get their head up, you know, and take a look around, because I have a duck call, ideas from Wally. And when I blow the duck call, they got to leave the puck. The other team gets it if they break that rule. So I've just put that on, and what I'm working on right now is a 2-second game. And the 2-second game, well, we started with 3 seconds with this age. Now we're up to 2. And it's the same thing. You can only have the puck on your stick 1001, 1002. And that causes puck support. And my teams, generally, people say, how many passing drills do you guys do? And blah, blah, blah. These are the things that cause it to happen. Then we play all kinds of games with this sort of thing to happen. So the video on this one, the 2-second game, Mike Kennedy was helping coach with, we were both working with the St. Men. And I was running this 2-second game, and he'd get there a little late. And he walked in, and St. the rink is way, you know, you're way above, and he's watching. He said it looked like a pro team. They're snapping the puck all over the place, which, you know, they don't usually do. And they were playing the 2-second game. And, you know, because they have to. And now they're regrouping. Guys are hitting holes, all kinds of stuff like that. And to me, that is what separates the players. Like, I play all the time, and it drives you crazy. You go down there, people don't even know you're there, or they don't get open for you. You get the puck, and there's, you know, they don't jump in a hole. And that both these games promote that so much. So those kind of games that cause things to happen, and the players basically making the game plan. I think that's how my coaching has changed over the years. So that's my little spiel.
Wally, your mic's off.
I went to the U13 practice of the other team. There's 2, you know, so-called elite teams at U13 female in Calgary. And I've always had some drills that I want them to see, to do, that get results. And it's really difficult to intervene with a coach running his practice. But last night there were no goalies. I'm on the bench. I don't go on the ice anymore. And the coach let me run some things like Tom's talking about. And I did a drill, Dan, and this is where my daughter gave it to me when I was coaching with the national team. She got it from the national field hockey team. She was a carded player. And I did it with these kids, but I did it for the coaches to see. And I'm mentoring coaches now more than, I'm not worried about the kids, but because the coaches teach the kids. And the drill is very simple. There happen to be 9 kids. They're 3 to a zone, numbered off 1, 2, 3. 1 carries, passes to 2 carries, passes to 3, maybe with an evasive tight turn. Pretty straightforward. Random skating, random passing. Now the statement my daughter gave me is 1 carries, passes to 2, who touch passes to 3. 3 carries, who passes to 1, who touch passes to 2, an odd number. So watching the kids do this, and I'm looking at the coaches, well, they were out there trying to interfere with the passers, and I talked to the head coach. I said, no, don't interfere with them. The second phase, the touch pass phase, the object of the purpose of the drill is as they're receiving it, they're thinking about what they're going to do with it. So if you have an odd number, I wouldn't go over 5. That drill clicks into the 2-3 second game because you're thinking about what you're going to do with it before you get it. It was critical. And I'm so glad I got to do that last night. And I had Grandpa Toner come over, Tom, after the practice, and he was he really complimented the kind of stuff I did because all related to eye contact, stick readiness, being open, support, thinking ahead for the passer and the receiver, getting into a spot. It's sort of, it leads to effective puck control, fewer turnovers, sustained possession. That's what the job of the coach is. We can keep stats on it, but what do we do to improve those stats? And I know at the U13 level, I didn't think they could do it, but they did it. Mission accomplished. You could just see them thinking and looking. And there might have been one kid that she just touch passed all the time, which she didn't carry it. She didn't get the essence of the drill, but that's where the coach at that station has to intervene and correct that. Now, Dan, the story I wanted to share, was about your looking after each other, and it's had to do with Mount Royal College and the head coach's name there. He's in the Nationals, I think, again. He created, and he shared this story with us before, and Tom, at one of our coffee sessions. He has, I think, 4 academic teams. He puts them together in terms of they're there to help each other, and they're keeping track of their own results academically and competing to be better than the other group. And it really worked for him. They became academic study groups, got together if they could. They had compatible schedules or something, and he worked it out. And it led to better results at school. But it's also away from the rink, looking after each other in terms of where are you at with your classes? What are the things you're peer teaching on? I don't know, but I just wanted to share that idea. It gives you another dynamic, taking the pressure off the outcome and all the nuances of X's and O's into the perspective of being a student athlete and the importance of helping each other stay focused. So Anybody got anything else out there? Now, I see Carrie Brackle is on. Carrie, are you there? Hopefully he can join us because he's sort of the master of everything that I'm talking about, Dan, which is sort of the delivery of coaching in terms of getting the most out of the group you've got, knowing who they are, getting them to buy in behaviorally to your coaching. So I don't know if Carrie is there or not, but I see a nice hockey picture. Not there yet? Okay. We'll give him a dingle and see if he can get on. Anybody have anything else to ask or add relative to what we're talking about? Rick,
Sorry,
Rick,
if I can just jump in, Wally, because I got to head to another meeting here
Okay.
in my day. But I really appreciate being on with everybody and the collaboration, sharing of ideas. And I want to thank you for inviting me this morning.
Thank you, Dan. You take care and we'll stay in touch.
Sounds good.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, I don't know if Carrie's going to be on or not, but he's the guy. And Rick, like you, he delivers on the behaviors and no problem at all with players. But over time in his generation of coaching, he's had difficulty being successful with it because of the change in generation of parenting, I think. And whether it's the helicopter parenting or there's another term, lawnmower parenting, I don't know. But Peter Whitney, go ahead.
Yeah, well, will you be able to get a hold of Dan to see if he can send that, I guess, goal success chart that he mentioned early on? I'm just really curious to look at that.
He emailed it to me.
Okay, great.
So I'll try to attach it as we speak. Here's the chart we discussed, he said. So
Perfect.
it's a rivalry series chart put together by Perry Pearn. So
Because we did that when I was at in coaching in prep school. We had a goals chart for every game where we would check off. I think we had probably a dozen categories. So I think it might have gotten a little bit busy, so to speak. But I like that idea, and I think today's world, when you can give people finite information, I think that can help depending on the player. The other thing too, that's interesting, and have you guys kind of chime in. Been having this discussion with a coach as well. Again, at the college level, talking about the impact of a plus minus and what it really means. As we talk about analytics and that, like talking about a kid so the kid's scored 10 goals and he's a minus 10. So coach isn't happy that he said, sure, he scored 10 goals, but he's a minus 10. So my question was, well, have you pulled up video? And right, like I can be a minus 10 and my defensive responsibility, that player has nothing to do with the goal being scored, but I still get the minus. So not just looking at that analytic. I think any analytic should pique your curiosity to dig deeper as to why that actually happened. So I'm just curious about that. What anybody else's thought is, if you run into that sort of that hard luck player that is actually a good player, successful, but ends up potentially being minuses in certain situations where they're not doing anything wrong, but they're still carrying the burden.
Well, Pierre Cagé gave a presentation on that, and he goes over the video and he figures out who's actually minus on plays.
Yeah, that's great, right? I mean, that's I think that's exactly what I'm talking about. Like, you can't condemn somebody just because they have
to do with the play.
Peter, I'd like to share a story exactly on that topic. Two stories. Lanny McDonald, Bob Johnson used to post plus minus in the room. And when he saw the look on Lanny McDonald's face, he stopped doing it. Because like you said, it was like devastating for him to be a minus or even to have a minus. He took it so personally. Now, my story about the importance of that is it's a true story with the national team. We've got 3 defensemen. We have to pick one for the 2002 Olympics. And we couldn't decide. As a coaching staff, we couldn't decide. We argued addendum about this one, that one, the blending and how they fit in. And finally, the video coach, Ryan Jankowski, who's scouting, I think, for Montreal now, I got him to get all the games against Team Sweden that we played in a tour of the island tour off the West Coast. We played them 3 games, and I got him to get every one of their shifts, those 3 players, recorded, and all the scoring chance shifts that they were on for and against. Now, the 5 people on the ice, we broke down. Plus meant they were the key impact in the performance leading to the result. They were a part of it, or a no factor, just no score. And if they were a minus in terms of causing the situation, or primarily responsible, minus. The choice was so easy. The differential of positives was 32 points for those 3 players. The one we picked scored 32 points on the positive side compared to the other 2. So as a group of coaches watching 3 players all year, we could not differentiate between the minute details. And by doing that, I learned as a coach, oh my God, do we really know what we're looking at? So that's a story I had on that particular topic, and thanks for bringing it up. It relates to Dan's use of statistics, whether analytics and that kind of thing, what you're bringing up. And the big thing is you looking at it, but maybe the players looking at it and understanding what it is they need to learn from that. So I call it video learning, and I haven't been able to experiment with it well enough because I haven't coached enough to get them to do that in a way that's right stuff, right amount, right time. So, Hal, your hand is up.
Yeah, I think those are good points. One of the things that I always look at when I'm watching the game is I remember that there's some statistic that says that most goals are scored 5 seconds after a turnover. So I always look to see where the turnover occurred. And if you think about that, if a wing in the neutral ice turns the puck over and disrupts the brush, and their team comes back the other way, they have a significant advantage, which is why we always say try not to turn the puck over on either blue line, right? And then and I always tell my players, especially my defensemen, your goal is when you come off the ice, is the coach yells at somebody else. Do your job. Don't try to do somebody else's job, right? And you break it down. And to Wally's point, we posted those stats for a couple of years, but it's like, okay, but maybe the players don't understand. In the game situation, you might have gotten a minus, but you might be our top 2D and you're playing with the third line. And they're going to get scored on more often than the first line is. Just kind of a fact of the game, in my opinion. But you got those guys out there to give that third line some support. And I would tell them, make sure you know who you're playing with and how that dictates how you're going to play the game. And so the stats can be really misleading on a broad level. on individual level, maybe it's important, but you know, you're going to get scored on 3 times a night, most likely. Great, you know, especially in minor hockey. So you can't fall apart. You know, the job's to score goals. And you know, if you can keep them to under 3 and you can score 3 or more, you're going to win a lot of hockey games. And so I don't worry too much about getting scored on once or twice because I'm more focused on making sure everybody stays mentally focused on, yeah, we got to play defense, but we got to do a better job up front. And so, you know, those turnovers just kill you. That team that I had this last year were turning over the puck. 80% of the passes coming out of the zone they turned over in the first half of the season. And they lost 80% of faceoffs at the beginning of the season. By the end of the season, we were winning 90% of the faceoffs, and we almost never turned the puck over coming out of the zone. And just focusing on those 2 things. And those were big contributors to being successful at the end of the season, even though we didn't have the actual skill sets that these top teams in our district had. So I know Jim Johnson, he's big on the stats. He loves to do it. He breaks down every game. I don't think he's doing it now, but when he was assistant coaching at Tampa and up in with San Jose and up in your neighborhood up there in Edmonton, you know, he'd take 3 hours and break down every game and plus minus and stat out all the guys. And but the head coaches weren't really particularly interested in the information, and, you know, because they were playing golf or something. I think you can go overboard with the stats. I think the NHL's gone way overboard. And think about it as a player. How would you like to have these stats in your face all the time? I mean, I don't know. I don't think it'd be much fun. But I didn't play at the National Hockey League level, so I don't know. But Peter, you did, didn't you? No, you didn't?
Peter, your speaker.
Yeah, no, I did not. I didn't have that. I did not have that good fortune.
Yeah.
But being around those guys, right, and like all of you who have been around players of that level, fun is important to them.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And because you're a kid, you know, you're an adult playing a kid's game, you get to be a kid, right?
Yeah.
So I agree with you 100%. Like if I'm always being attacked, so to speak, from a standpoint of, well, got to do this better, got to do that better, got to do that. Well, what am I doing right then? Right. So I agree with you.
A funny story I'll tell you, then I got to run. When I coached the National Sports Festival, so these were all Division I players. This is when the Olympics were amateurs. It was like in '81. Luvero was about to be the new coach. Brooks was, you know, just won the gold medal. And we were at University of Syracuse. We had a number of the players were from University of Minnesota and Duluth and whatever, WCHA guys. And many of them went on to play in the National Hockey League. And their coach at Minnesota was a guy named Brad Buto. And Brad, I sat down at lunch with him, and he wanted to show me his constant pressure forecheck system. And he started on a rink diagram. He started with this guy goes here, this guy goes here, this guy goes here. If the puck goes here, this guy goes here. And he just kept going on and on until the whole zone was covered with lines. And I'm looking at it, I go, and I know some of these kids, you know, from Roseau, Minnesota, or Warroad, Minnesota, you know, and they were at the university, but school wasn't really on their minds much. And I said, okay, well, that's interesting, Brad. And then I get to coach those kids out at the sports festival, and we were after one of the games, and we were sitting around. Budweiser was the sponsor of the event, so there was free beer everywhere, and we were having a beer after a practice. And I said, all right, tell me about the constant pressure forecheck. And they all started to laugh. And they go, yep, we practice it all week long. But on Friday night, we just go play hockey. we don't pay any attention to it. So, you know, I don't know what that says about the coaching. I don't know what it says about the players. To me, I think it probably says overcoaching. And I think our job is to let the talent speak for itself for the game. Our job's at practice, but make sure practice makes them better and makes them excited to play on Friday night and Saturday or whatever night you're playing. So, so I got to run, you guys. This is so awesome. Sorry I missed last week. I promise to be on next week too. So, cheers. Have a good rest of the day.
Okay, take care, Hal.
Yep, see you guys.
Well,
Now, I'm just going to double check to see if Kerry Bracco is on. Kerry, are you there? It says guest user, Kerry Bracco. No.
he's still on the couch.
Well, he's at the office. So now listen, one of the things I wish Dan Church was on for, because when you get to the Canada West final, I watched U of C play the U of A. And U of A won the first game here. U of C won the second, so I go to the third game. It was an unbelievable hockey game, like literally X and O perfection. The U of A team, I thought, forechecked better, had low zone offense, created scoring chances from it. The U of C, I think, might have had a little more skill, but they're so even. And you're talking about who's going to win. Like, you think it's a crapshoot. Well, the U of C tied the game. There was a point shot, and I talked to the head coach, Mark Howell. The point shot was a shot pass off the end boards, but maybe it was just a shot that missed the net that came off the end boards. The head coach, as soon as the goal was scored, I said, did he do that deliberately? And I asked Mark Howell after, and he said, I asked him, the player, and I don't believe him. He said, yeah, I did. So it literally had a play like that, and a smart play that might have been an accident. The winning goal with 2 minutes left, offensive zone face-off. The center and the inside winger had communicated about a push-by because of the way the defensive alignment was at the face-off circle. They had talked about it during the game, the two players, nothing from the coach. And they came up with that play that got the winning goal. So I think that this idea of these stats and coaching and you influencing it, in the end, the players are going to make the decisions to do what they're going to do on the ice. And it's going to turn out however it's going to turn out. So it's up to chance. And as long as we don't interfere with the players too much, guide them and encourage them, I think that's the art of coaching. And the national CIS championships in male and female are going to be on this week. And I just relish at the thought that, and I wish Kerry was on, because he has coached teams that have never been the most talented teams at national midget championships, yet they've won. And I think the reason they won is his ability to get them to buy into playing a certain way and delivering on it consistently. And that's, the head coach controls the emotional atmosphere, the behavioral atmosphere. And when players buy into you and believe in what you're doing and saying, that's when you get results. So, well, I'm just gonna, Rick, have you got anything to add to this? Because, I struggle with us talking coaching minor hockey, and then Dan comes on. He's talking CIS, and there's people that would rather talk all those things and those stats. And I think we're talking about the art of coaching, the behavioral side of coaching. So, have you got anything else to add to that?
Probably not at the moment, Wally, obviously, or I'd be speaking. I did want to say hi to Carrie out there. I see he's still on. From listening to what went on earlier, though, I will add, with my process that I sort of sketchily outlined earlier with controlling the off-ice environment to a significant degree, getting into a mode of the way we do our business, that is always, almost 100% of the time, put our teams in a winning scenario. And so 3-4 years back, I was involved in provincials, female provincials, with a B class team that had competed the year before and not done very well. And in that year, there were 2 undefeated teams in the tournament. We were one of them. The other team was from up north, and they were essentially largely constituted with AA players. They just didn't have anywhere else to play in that environment. So before the final game, one of the coaches came to me and said the girls are pretty uptight. They're really nervous about this. And it occurred to me that there was no reason to be nervous. So I went into them and I asked them if they were, and for the most part they agreed. And I said, what have you got to be nervous about? Did you prepare anything different for this game than we've ever done all season? No. Have we had good success preparing this way and being ready to play and play the way we play? Yes. So what do we have to be nervous about? If we go out and do what we've always done, there's a good probability it's going to work in our favor. And if it doesn't, there wasn't much else we could do anyways. So let's just get out there and enjoy it. And long story short, we didn't win that game. We lost it by 2 to a far superior skilled team. But the message I got back from that was, if you have a way of doing things and it brings you good results, then confidence is that. That's what you draw on, and you take the anxiety out of it by just going out there and doing what's always worked for you, and always worked for the most part successfully. I thought I'd just throw that in there.
Rick, I like what you said, taking the anxiety out of it. And Tom's going into the city semifinals, and I have no anxiety about the outcomes. Tom's on the bench, he's coaching, they're hoping to get another game, they want to win it. It's good for them. And to me, watching how they play, win or lose, I could always accept losing. I'm the best losing coach in the world. In other words, I just look at it as a learning experience. They're there to make you better. Those boys teams, Tom, there's bigger, stronger, more talented boys on it. They play one-on-one hockey. Some of them can shoot the puck. You can't control the outcome, but you know how to defend them, and you've got a tactical plan of not giving them any space and playing without the puck. It's working. It's unbelievable to watch your games. And to play poorly because of anxiety, I think that positive apprehension, have a degree of excitement and looking forward to the challenge of the experience. And I think the girls are very confident, and it's a reflection of the, the coaching staff has transmitted that energy and that belief. I mean, they're playing beyond expectations, Tom. I don't know what your expectations were, but at the beginning of the year, I thought they were very good. But now I'm watching them, and they're beyond what you expect at that age.
Well, it's interesting because most of them play with no fear. Sometimes I wish they had a little more fear. Like do a wheel across the net, and the other team's got players in front, and they got the confidence to weave through these players right in front of our net, and I pass out when that happens. But they love the puck, all of them, and they move it better than other players. But there was one idea from here. Tim said years ago. He said when he was coaching, he was helping Danielle, I think, coach at the University of Calgary, and he said, in female hockey, you can swarm all the time. They got one, you have two, like being on them all the time. He says, because very few times can they get it down the ice really clean, and get a shot on net if you're back checking hard. So I think I was coaching midget AA at that time. And we were 50-50 just before Christmas. And we started doing that. We lost one game the rest of the season, won the provincials, just because, we know that hardly anybody passes. So we back pressure the puck carrier, always make it defensive 2-on-1, which you got to be really good to beat. And, really work on our 1-on-1. Like we've been doing a lot of stuff with the D with no stick so that they don't stare at the puck, because that was a really bad habit they had. And basically, like we talked before, if you turn the puck over, you got the other team going forward, and especially if you pop it up right away, you get advantages. Because I think our last game we got about 6 breakaways, and the team we're playing tonight is interesting. They were absolutely clobbering everybody first half, and they must have had a blow up on the team because their goalie quit, so they have no goalie. So we're getting stuff from Girls Hockey Calgary. Can you lend a goalie to this team? And all this sort of thing. So I have no idea who their goalie will be, but they must have had a lot of, they haven't done as well, but now they must be doing pretty good because, we're in the semifinals against them. So the deal is if we beat them, then the team we'd play on Sunday will not have lost yet. So we've got to beat them twice. So it's an interesting format, but yeah, they like the way we practice, and a lot of those, every practice we have a game of at least one pass in each zone, or a 2-second game, and this, to get them, moving the puck and getting their eyes up, and that's something. But besides outnumbering the team on defense and basically being the only team in the league that actually passes the puck, it makes up for being a little smaller in size and not shooting quite as hard, but it's all fun. The kids having a lot of fun, and it's fun coaching them because it's incredible how hard they work. It's really unfortunate our best D is going somewhere, but that's the way she goes. Your mic, Wally.
Yeah, guys, I have to run. Wally, I really appreciate you putting this together. The topic was great. And I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And I look forward to seeing you guys next week.
Super.
Hey, Peter.
Take
Take
care.
care.
Peter.
Kerry just phoned you guys. I don't know if he's able to join us or not, but it's been a good session today. It's really awkward when, like, I knew when Dan requested that information, he's working on X's and O's, and I don't know at that level. I guess that matters more at that higher level, or does it? What do you guys think, Tom? Rick?
Well, I'll tell you that when Perry Pearn did that forecheck, nobody could handle it. They came at you so hard,
Yeah,
and that was X's and O's, and he'd call it. They didn't do it all the time.
yeah,
And all of a sudden and the second player, a lot of times, like if they had the puck in the, one side, his second player would go behind the net, so you couldn't even go D to D,
yeah,
and he just took all the options away, and they always had a big, fast team, and they'd, really, and I mean, he was beating U of A regularly at that time, and they were the best university team in Canada.
yeah.
So that was X's and O's there. So, and I know the Torpedo, when Sweden did it, was it in 2010 or 2006?
Yeah,
To beat Canada 5-2 in the Olympics there.
yeah,
That those kind of things it causes the other team to adapt, and if they don't adapt,
yeah,
because the reads are different. Like on the Torpedo, because I used it a lot, the winger doesn't know who they're covering a lot of times, because the midfielders there and the D are there,
yeah,
and they'll get confused and they'll let one of them go. So X's and O's are important, and they change the way they kill penalties against that 1-3-1.
yeah,
Most teams have, even though Colorado didn't, most teams have the 2 up top and then the 2D below, that kind of meshes with player in the middle of the zone. So X's and O's are important, but they're not the be all end all. If you aren't working hard, it doesn't really matter what you're doing.
yeah. Tom, power play at your level, does it make any difference yet or not?
Well, we introduced the spread below the goal line because we want them to get the puck low.
Yeah,
And get everybody's back turned, and it translates into 5-on-5 as well. Getting the puck low and going east to west and out front, usually the player's wide open.
yeah,
They don't really set up on it that much, and we don't even push it that much. But to give them the idea, give them the idea first, and they go from there. We just introduced that just last week, I think. But I won't try, I guess we could. We don't have enough time to work on a lot of that stuff, and it's mostly making good plays and close puck support are kind of our offensive thing.
Tom, when is your game? It's not tonight.
No, we play Saturday.
Okay, well, I'll see you there. And Wes is in a tournament, and he's playing at my end of town, at my arena and at Northeast Sportsplex. So I'm going to watch him play a couple. It's fun watching you guys.
Tonight, 5:30 at Max Bell.
Yeah,
and we play.
I'll be there to watch the practices, and
11:45 at Shoaldice on Saturday.
yeah. Okay, we're good for those. Anyway, thanks very much, guys. I'm going out for taking my son-in-law out for dinner to lunch. So I'm gonna sign off here and maybe get some editing done before. I'm glad Dan was able to come on. If you guys got any ideas about topics for next week or somebody you want to get on, I'm imagining trying to get some of the people on as a group that are in the national CIS finals, 2 or 3 coaches to talk about what they've learned from achieving to get there and what they learned from getting there. But who knows? We might end up talking about Tom and what the experience he's gone through all year.
Well, one of the reasons I want to win so bad is I like working with these players. So if you get beat, then it's kind of like some little tournament at the end of the year. But it's fun working with these players. So that's.
Well, they do play exceptionally hard, and I think that's sort of what whoever coached them before. I believe Kyle's coached a lot of the kids. Their work ethic and their belief in being able to play that way, they're very courageous against the boys. They first to pucks, they don't hesitate. They end up on the bottom of a lot of contact, but
And there's at least one or two boys helped off the ice every game.
yeah,
You go to rough the girls up, and the boy ends up all twisted. And
yeah, they. It was the last game in particular. It was quite a game delay when the boy went down on a collision.
yeah,
And
Assie's kid, she grew about 5 inches this year, and she doesn't quite have control of all her body parts. And she
Yeah.
just runs. She runs over some kids sometime. I call her Brooke Lucic.
okay, guys. Thanks very much for joining.
Have a good week.
Okay, bye-bye.
See you guys.
See
Okay,
you.
John. Wally.